Morning World. This is Steve Rao wearing my Tina Turner Simply the Best t-shirt. Made me feel nostalgic. We welcome you to World Edition. Today, our global show on Pod and Roku TV, where we talk about global affairs, innovation, and issues that are of importance to us all around the world. I greet you live from North Carolina, the eighth largest state in the Union, Morrisville to be exact, right here in the RTP area, near Duke and UNC and NC State. Today, we're going to continue our conversation of an ever-changing world, turbulence politically, economically. America's National Security Advisor, Jake Sullivan, and China's Foreign Minister, Wang Yi, held candid, substantive, and constructive talks in Malta. There is speculation that this may result in a meeting between the two countries' presidents, Mr. Xi and President Joe Biden. Meanwhile, in Ukraine, President Zelensky states that Ukraine has taken over Klishchiva, an eastern village near Bakhmut. Ukraine's counteroffensive has made slow progress, but Mr. Zelensky says his troops were making gains step by step. Perhaps this is a turning point for the war, or is it going to be a continued seesaw with one side winning and then the next day another side winning another battle? Keir Starmer, the leader of Britain's opposition, vowed to improve the country's Brexit deal in 2025. More about Rishi Sunak's future on future editions of this show. And basically, Foxconn, the world's largest contract manufacturer, said it plans to double its workforce and investment in India next year. We've always been talking about India as the growing economic power in the world, on its way, as John Chambers, former CEO of Cisco, says, number one. A nimble, innovative government, one that is making investments in infrastructure. And this announcement by Foxconn follows Apple's announcements by Tim Cook at Apple that they as well are going to invest in manufacturing in India. Meanwhile, as those manufacturing efforts expand, we're seeing our own country invest in manufacturing and jobs right here in the United States. In North Carolina, where Mark Lee and I live, Wolfspeed, silicon carbide chip manufacturer, is doing a lot of stuff, along with VinFast, the Vietnamese car maker, which is making electric cars. But all these batteries and parts, because of the CHIPS and Science Act, are being done in the United States. And I will say, before I open it up, that this is actually something common that former President Trump and President Biden have, is that Trump, I want to give him credit, led the efforts to bring jobs back, and President Biden is continuing this policy. So often we never talk about what the President of the United States, former and current, or former presidents are doing to work together to make America progress economically. But we are seeing significant uptake in manufacturing. So we're going to go ahead and begin continuing our conversation. I'm going to be here for about 20 minutes, but Mark Lee and others joining. And the tennis conference tournament was awesome. We ended up having Zachary Zavada beat Rinky Hijikata, who is the Australian who got to the fourth round of the U.S. Open, a surprise upset. Match was moved indoors, really becoming a training ground, Mark, for top professional tennis players who are actually using this as a way to really make it on the tour. Tiafoe, Ben Shelton, Chris Eubanks, and Michael Moe have all played this tournament in Cary. So I was honored to be a sponsor, and I look forward to great things ahead.
And speaking of sponsors, I'm hopefully going to reach out to SciMed, because I was actually in downtown Durham this weekend working at Centerfest, our annual street festival, and they were one of the primary sponsors, and they're doing a lot of work in robotics and technology and all along those lines. So I'll try to reach out to the owner of that, as well as some other folks, and they may be appearing on the show, because there were a number of sponsors in your lane, in the technology lane, and all along those lines. But definitely one of the other things I was curious about that you didn't get to, and I was wondering if Lee Newton Rhodes is going to have any thoughts around this or not. But one of the things that is going on with the indictment of Hunter Biden is this notion of the IRS involvement, and apparently he's suing the IRS, which I just saw in the news today.
Yeah, I was going to bring up Hunter. I left Trump and Biden out because I wasn't in my notes I took this morning. But yeah, interesting. Biden. First of all, Hunter Biden is being charged for firearms possession, and in addition, he's got all these other things. So And then Trump's indictment. I don't know what updates we have on there, but it's I mean, I think at this point, I think a lot of people, even on this show, we could talk about Trump and Hunter Biden like all day. It's just nothing's really changing until there's a conviction on either side, right?
Right,
So,
that could be the
yeah,
case. But
we have Sasha. Can you tell us about Klis? Can you pronounce that name of the village that Ukraine claims that they have won back? Sasha, I think I might have heard the pronunciation wrong.
Sorry,
Klis.
there are so many cities and villages.
It starts. It's. I'm sorry, Sasha. It's. Let me give you the name. It's Klisovica.
Krishevitsa or
Klischivka, I think.
Klishchevka.
Yeah, Klischivka. Yeah. So Zelensky says that they've taken that over, and I'm not sure if that's a good sign or not. But just any updates, insights for you on that would be great.
Listen, it's a little some kind of a slowdown in activities there because of this upcoming the United Nations session where Zelensky is participating. That's meetings with U.S. Leadership of Zelensky in Washington and possibly New York, mostly in Washington, I would guess. There could be address to joint Senate and House, and probably most likely meeting with Joe Biden. So there are a lot of things sort of getting into diplomatic sphere. As of course you followed the meeting of Kongin in to Russia, where he was praised by Putin and Russian leadership, and they made a big show out of it. And this is something to disturb the West, that there could be a new alliance between Russia, North Korea, China, maybe even Iran. And there would be quite formidable opposition to West in that region. So therefore, the situation in Ukraine is extremely important because right now Russia is fighting the country, which is much smaller in size, which virtually had almost no army just about 2 years ago, and all of a sudden it cannot do anything decisive in the last several months. And that could be a disturbing sign for possible alliances with countries like China and North Korea and Iran. And so therefore Russians probably preparing some kind of an attack against Ukrainian positions wherever they can still do it. And they're activating the bombardment of peaceful Ukrainian cities, infrastructure, killing civilians, unfortunately. So this Zelensky's visit probably could be very beneficial for Ukrainian population, providing some new answers to all this menace from Russia.
Mm-hmm. Definitely appreciate that update and everything. Hey, Steve, Legion Rose was asking a question, and we'll get to some of the other news stories as well. I know that he's busy, but he'll try to join Economics Monday and all. But apparently we've got a missing stealth fighter jet, and the U.S. is asking the public for help after apparently there was a mishap, and he's asking a very valid question. How do you lose a plane on American soil? So apparently their stealth abilities appear to be working too well, and their authorities are forced to ask the public for help finding the F-35 that went missing somewhere over South Carolina when the pilot ejected because of a quote-unquote mishap. So I just wondered if you have any friends in the military and any thoughts that you might have about this plane that just apparently just disappeared out of nowhere, and they're asking for the public to help find it. So I guess it's asking folks to go on a manhunt to look for this missing plane.
I have not seen or heard anything about this fighter. It's concerning about missing U.S. fighter plane. Let's not forget that, whenever I think of missing fighter planes, I think of the late President George H.W. Bush, who was shot down over Iwo Jima and then was taken in as a prisoner briefly, or rescued. But just you never know what's going on, and hope that they find it.
Hopefully they do and everything. I wanted to come back to Hunter Biden for a while, and I wanted to know if Sasha or you had any thoughts about this. But he is suing the IRS, alleging that agents tried to target and embarrass him. So he is suing the IRS over tax information disclosure, and he's saying that that is an alleged breach of his privacy. So how much privacy do we have when we file our taxes? And all along those lines, I wish that Nick was here, since he's the lawyer in the bunch and everything. But I'm just wondering y'all's thoughts about this, and is this just more political tit for tat and all along those lines? Because it is definitely something that is out there. And like I said, he is suing the IRS.
Good luck.
Good luck, but not much chance of it happening is what you're thinking, and all along those lines. That makes a lot of sense, and I agree with you on that. Hey, one of the other things, Steve, that was going on in the world is that we're having another one of those lovely prisoner swaps. So I don't know if you had any thoughts about this, but apparently, and I think Sasha may have mentioned them as one of our folks that are part of that alliance of folks that don't like the U.S., that being Iran. And apparently we have gotten together and we are doing a prisoner swap on today. So they're saying that 5 Americans detained in Iran are freed and on a flight out of the country, according to what officials have told CNN. And this was all part of a $6 billion oil money prisoner swap. So they got something out of it.
So what is a swap? How many Iranians were released in the United States?
Let's find out. It's looking like, I'm thinking oil money was what was swapped, but let's find out more details, because if we're giving away $6 billion, that's money that probably could be going toward the fight there in Ukraine.
I didn't ask about money. No. You said that it's a prisoner swap.
That's the way they described it. So that's the way they described it.
So certain Americans were released in Iran and certain Iranians were released in America in exchange. And that constitutes a swap. Now, when you are exchanging prisoners for money, that's not a swap, I'm sorry.
Well, according to the article, and this is an article from The Guardian, 5 U.S. prisoners detained in Iran, some for nearly a decade, have left the country by plane to Qatar as part of a controversial prisoner swap involving the unfreezing by the Biden administration of $6 billion of Iranian oil money. So it is.
I know all that, but that's not a swap. That's a commercial transaction. You give us so many people, we'll give you so much money. But there is swap. Swap means that so many Iranians were exchanged for so many Americans. I don't see that.
Well, I hear what you're saying, but and I'd love to hear Steve's thoughts about this. And maybe Lee's got some on the sidelines and everything. But there are some Republican senators in the U.S. and some former Iranian political detainees who have accused Joe Biden of striking a deal that will only encourage Iran to keep hostage taking as a central part of its diplomatic arsenal. So the U.S. State Department says the money that is being released is oil money that was already owed to Iran and frozen by the Trump administration in 2018 when the U.S. left the Iran nuclear deal. So it's not clear if the deal will lead to a wider diplomatic breakthrough or a new, less ambitious route. So I hear what you're saying about it. A swap should be 1 for 1 and things along those lines. But there are times that swaps are.
Even 1 for 10 is a swap.
Right.
But I don't see anything what indicates a swap. I don't see any Iranians held in the United States who were released in exchange for release of the 5 Americans held in Iran. I just don't see it. There is no swap. There is a transaction, but not a swap.
Just really quickly, and then I want to hear Sasha. I mean, heard your thoughts, Sasha, but Steve's thoughts and everything. But Republican presidential contender Ron DeSantis described Biden's decision, quote unquote, as outrageous, adding that it has sent a signal to hostile regimes that if you take Americans, you could potentially profit. A rogue regime should know that if you touch the hair on the head of any American, you will have hell to pay. So he's basically taking that hardline stance that if you grab anybody, then you will suffered the consequences. Now, whether that's just a lot of political posturing, that would be my guess. But Steve, what's your thoughts? Is that just a lot of political posturing?
Repeat the question, please.
He's talking about, because Ron DeSantis is saying that it was a bad decision by Biden, and that if you touch the head of an American, I guess he's saying that if he was president, that you would definitely have hell to pay. So it sounds like he was doing some political posturing and saying that the original decision was a horrible one by Biden, but to give money, even though we know we've done other money trades. I can even think of the Noriega trades and other kind of things that were going on in Latin America. But what are your thoughts about this notion of it being possibly political posturing? And I'm sure that the other Republican candidates, and maybe even Robert Kennedy, will jump into the fray talking about how.
Yeah. It's, you've got to differentiate and find areas of contention and difference with your opponents. I think typically the Republicans tend to always paint the Democrats as weak on foreign policy, and I think DeSantis is taking it off that playbook. In addition, weak on the border, that would be a big issue. So a lot of these issues will be used for political posturing. And I've said time and time again, I'm going to talk about immigration later this week. I just wrote an article that was posted in our local papers and news stations about immigration. It's more and more political posturing as we get towards the end of the year and officially begin the presidential, election. So still DeSantis second. Trump, I think, will win the nomination unless he's convicted or something major happens, or the Republicans get together and get the delegates to nominate someone else. But right now, unfortunately, I see it being Biden-Trump. And I think the concern on the Democratic side is, will Biden be able to turn out younger voters, African-American and Black voters, which could be concerning in close states like North Carolina and other states around the country. I think Trump also has the same challenge. So in his own party, there'll be fatigue, what they call Trump fatigue. So all this posturing is so that, another candidate could emerge, like a DeSantis, like a Haley. Don't think it's going to be Ramaswamy, although he's, I think, vying for VP. So, Trump, Ramaswamy.
Definitely. And we've been talking to Jacoby. We got Jacoby joining us about both what was going on with this prison swap that was going on recently between Iran and the U.S., as well as some of the news from Ukraine, and of course some of the other news that was going on in the world as well and everything. But that's where we were at. And I was just going to ask Sasha really quickly, because you kind of mentioned it earlier. How strong an alliance is this whole thing between North Korea and Russia going to be? It looks like the North Korean leader Kim Jong-un departed on an armored train after his Russian visit, but it looks like he left with some interesting gifts, including a fur hat, a rifle, and some drones. So apparently he had some gifts there and everything. So definitely some explosive goodbye gifts that he was given and all along those lines. But how concerned should we be concerned about this kind of alliance that is developing? It's not just North Korea, but Iran, some of these other forces that are out there that seem to be talking to each other and having a love fest with each other, for lack of a better word. Tasha?
Okay. Listen, you probably should not take so seriously North Korea. It's one of the poorest countries on earth. The people don't have enough food for daily consumption. Most of the population in North Korea. So how should the West be really concerned about that? Russia is taking too much place in Western discussions, simply because if you take Russian GDP, it means nothing. And all this noise about their thermonuclear arsenal and so on, it's nothing but noise. Most likely it doesn't work because it hasn't been maintained, it hasn't been changed the uranium and plutonium materials. Most of it probably was stolen. And to tell the truth, okay, if they will even think about using the nuclear arsenal, United States at any given time has 2,000 tomahawks ready to fly and destroy any Russian facilities that could threaten the West. So basically, for their slightly even less than 1.5% of the world GDP. This country does not deserve so much attention. And as much as the fight with Ukraine, if West wanted, they would give ultimatum in 72 hours, get all your soldiers out of Ukraine. And if not, they will be all destroyed in a matter of 40 minutes. I think Russia would not risk being destroyed, and they would take their forces out of Ukraine. I don't think that US has that aggressive stance against Russia, so they will probably bleed Russia to a slow death through this lengthy war with Ukraine. It will simply become powerless, and they will just disintegrate in a matter of, say, 2 years, if not earlier.
Hey, Sasha, along those same lines, just really quickly, because there was another article I saw that was of interest, because sometimes internal fighting is kind of like a family. Sometimes internal fighting can cause almost as much problem as the external fighting. And apparently, Ukraine is planning to sue Poland, Hungary, and Slovakia in the World Trade Organization over bans on Ukrainian agricultural products. So they just announced that today. So the appeal could be sent in the near future, a senior official said, and followed a decision by the three countries bordering Ukraine to ban imports of the country's key export commodities, which is definitely grain is the primary one. But I was just wondering your thoughts around that, and is that going to be problematic, or is this something that Ukraine should be doing? Because it says restrictions imposed by the European Union in May allowed Poland, Bulgaria, Hungary, Romania, and Slovakia to ban domestic sales of Ukrainian wheat, maize, rapeseed, and sunflower seeds, while permitting transit of such cargoes to for export elsewhere. So I just wanted your thoughts about this kind of internal fight within the West.
I think it's a normal process where countries are trying to protect interests of their farmers. So that's not a totally unexpected reaction. The only thing is that
Yes.
the remedy could be re-export of or transit export of Ukrainian grain to other countries. For example, even African countries badly need the Ukrainian agricultural products, so they have to be in transit through Europe because Russian blocked the Black Sea Ukrainian ports. And they've been systematically destroying the facilities in Ukrainian ports. So therefore, they cannot carry the trade as they normally did. So they're trying to find new ways to export their grain. That's about it. And it has to be regulated, negotiated, and so on.
And I think agriculture, that's a really great point. And I think that's a really great issue for us to talk about on World Edition is agriculture, because we often, like in North Carolina, for example, it's the highest growth industry. And I fault myself often for talking about tech and pharma and life sciences a lot, but, ag is big. And a lot of the innovation we talk about could be used to help farming. I mean, we've talked about AI on this show, but imagine using technologies and sensors and data so that you can make better predictions about weather patterns, especially during this time of climate change, when droughts would be, when there's going to be flooding, when storms might be hitting, and that's going to help farmers. But then when we look at what's going on with Ukraine and the grain deal, we often forget that when parts of the world are affected. Now, I know in India, farmers are dying. I mean, the small farmers are getting killed. And even in the U.S., it's hard for the small farmer to make it. Mark, we should reach out to Agricultural Commissioner Gus Douglas or Steve Troxler to talk about, agriculture, right? Because a lot of the innovation, and there's like organic food processing, being able to manufacture different types of foods. And let's not forget plant-based meats and all these things that Bill Gates has actually invested in to reduce carbon emissions, and that's agriculture as well, right? So I think it's I don't know what Josh, I'm curious, in Canada, how big is the agricultural industry in Canada?
Very big. It's very big. It's I think well organized. There's why I'm saying that it's well organized, not because I'm an expert in that. It's just very few conflicts that being brought on first pages of newspapers or television or so on. It's kind of regulated and well run just by itself. So there's no government intervention, regulations, or anything involved, and it's functioning quite well, in my opinion.
It's fantastic. I mean, and I wonder what crops are, again, like standard grain, wheat, dairy, probably all of the above.
Almost all of it, I would say, except bananas and some other.
Maybe that's what Donald Trump needs is to go work on a farm for. That changed my life. I got in trouble once when I was a kid, and my dad and then I was in Delaware, and they made me go work on a farm from May until July. And I remember getting up at 4 a.m, milking the cows, baling the hay. And I tell you, that just shut me up real quick. I'd get home around 6 o'clock and go right to bed and do it again.
Wow.
7 days a week. And that changed me. I never was the same. And actually, that farming experience, I was training for tennis, made me a much more competitive athlete. And I tell you, I honestly think, like, after that farming experience, I never slept in ever again. I always get up early. And I always go to bed early. I think it was like this traumatic
It's definitely life changing. Farm work can be challenging. My grandparents were involved in the farming space and all along those lines. And I do remember going to some of the farmers markets. And I know that here in North Carolina, I believe it's next month, the state fair will be taking place. And that is oftentimes very much dedicated to the farm industry. There are a couple of other activities that are held during the year that are dedicated to that industry as well. And we can definitely reach out to some of those people that are in that space. And I even remember not so much working on the farm, but definitely the impact of the farm, even growing up in rural North Carolina, because a lot of times the students that were on the farm, I'm not sure how it was here in the Durham or Chapel Hill region, which Toby knows better in terms of the school system. But if you grew up in rural North Carolina, you might be one of the few students there until farm season was done, because they would start school while the kids were helping with the crops and all along those lines. So it was not a full class until later on in the early part of the fall season. I'd say like around mid-September, October was by the time we had full stock of all the students and everything. Did you have something similar, Jatovi, when you were in school and all along those lines?
I mean, not too similar, because that was still a lot, but that was still before my time, because when I was in school, I mean, still farms are big. My grandparents had a farm. That used to pick the crops on there as well, the corn, and had chickens and had cow and everything else. But I mean, it wasn't, in terms of the scholastic, not filling out the classes till the kids got there. I mean, that was a little bit before, I guess, my time when the classes were there.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense and everything. One thing I was curious about, and it's actually based on a conversation I had yesterday, and you kind of alluded to it, Steve, and everything, but we talk about technology and we talk about the advancements of technology, but there are some things that, while we have gotten better, it is still not all the time accurate, because as you know, there was rain that was going on this weekend, and a lot of people were thinking that North Carolina was going to get hit a little bit harder than it actually did get hit, but instead Hurricane Lee went up and hit more of the Northeast, and I believe it's hitting Canada now as well. So I was just wondering your thoughts around the accuracy, because one of the things I was talking about to some of the Centerfest organizers was that, we didn't really have to deal with it that much. There was some drizzles, but the show went on and all in that space. But there was speculation that it could have been even worse rain than we got. So a lot of times, they say the weatherman might be the only job that you can be not that accurate and still maintain your job and all along those lines. So I just wonder your thoughts, because as the person pointed out to me, we have gotten better in technology, but you can't dictate what Mother Nature is going to do. And sometimes even that better technology isn't always as accurate as we would like it to be, and all in that space. But I just wonder y'all's take on that, and whether we have gotten better with weather predictions, and whether it is something that we will never get 100% correct.
I mean, we've gotten a little bit, but I mean, we've gotten incrementally better using more models and using more AI. I mean, we're never going to get that 100% correct. The weather patterns are always going to change as the climate continues to warm. We figured, I mean, it's just tough. You can't predict the extreme amount of weather that's going to happen. You can't. So yeah, I mean, the weatherman or the weatherwoman, weather person has gotten a lot better, but it's just something that we're never going to be able to predict correctly every single time.
That makes a lot of sense. I can agree with that, and all along those lines. Just really quickly, we were talking about before you got here, Jacoby, and I just wondering your thoughts, because one of the things that Lee had brought up, and I had heard about it earlier, but how do we manage to lose an entire plane? And I do remember the famous case. I think it was Gary U.S. Bonds, or maybe it was some of the other ones that were in the crime space, and they intentionally or unintentionally maybe got lost. But this was a fighter plane that is lost, and they're asking for the public to help for this plane that apparently got lost over South Carolina. So I wonder if you had any thoughts about that, and also the cry to get the public to help.
It's just one of those things. The plane could have gone down. The plane could have if the sensors and everything don't pick it up, you have to go with the eyeball test. And we never really realized how big the world actually is. I mean, even though I can say it's only 2 hours to the beach from where we are, I can't see everything. I can go outside and look up, and I can't see everything. So yeah, losing a plane, it's hard to imagine, but it can happen because of all the sensors and the technology on there. We are reliant on that. And if that goes out, it's hard to just go out and eyeball it if nobody's out looking for it. I'm surprised he didn't talk about Lauren Boebert.
Talk about who?
Lauren Boebert. And her story about getting kicked out of the theater now starting to come out more.
And apparently she's also, sometimes we talk about people's significant others and whether they need the privacy, but apparently there is more coming out about her history as well. So I did see some stories around who she's dating, and how that make her a better appeal to certain communities. Because I want to say that one of the people that she was dating had some support within the LGBTQIA community, and all along those lines. So that is maybe trying to soften her position to some degree, because I did see that come out as well. But I don't know if you had followed that part of the story as well.
Well, she's been hiding that. She's been going after that guy for a while that has drag shows in his club.
Right.
Or burlesque club shows, and actually, drag shows in his club. But also that I don't think that's softening the blow. This is right now Sasha's alley, because they were caught groping each other in the actual theater. So that was also on the video, is that, he was grabbing onto particular parts, and she was doing the same while the show was going on as well.
And we should care because
it's funny.
I mean, why is that national news? I mean, don't we have major problems in this world, such as Libya, that didn't support their basically fixing their dams? They killed 10,000 people.
But it doesn't, Nick, I'm sorry, but it doesn't entertain. It's a grim reality.
Yeah, people going to theater and groping each other, to me, is just not really entertaining. That's not really newsworthy for anybody.
So the reason it's newsworthy is because of her positions and stances.
Who the heck is she? I don't know who Flora Bora is. What is it? An island in the Caribbean
No,
or something?
she's one of the members of MAGA. She's one of the
Island
MAGA
in the
group.
I don't follow Magna Group or Magna Group or whoever the heck they
So-
are. Who cares about these people?
Well, she's taken a staunch stance against abortion, yet
Good.
the pregnant
Good
woman.
for her. So do 5 million
Well,
other people, but who cares?
No, but the funny
Why is
part
she
is
getting
that
any publicity at all? I don't know.
so she took such a staunch stance and yelling out that children's lives matter and everything else. The pregnant woman
Okay, so
behind
she's a
her,
deviant. Why do
the
we give
pregnant woman
deviants
behind
all
her
the
asked
love?
her to stop smoke or stop vaping, and she told the pregnant woman off. She yelled at her. So
Yeah, right.
it was a contradiction there. She talks
Yeah,
about how
okay, so
drag
what you're doing
shows.
is Jacoby, you're describing a classic jerk. Why
Yeah.
is the jerk getting any publicity at all? Why are we? I was going to say jerking something.
Well, she did that.
Hold on a second, Nick. Hold on a second, Nick. Hold on a second,
Why
Nick.
are we jerking?
Nick, to
You
your
know what I
point.
mean?
No,
In other
Nick,
words,
Nick,
these
to your
people that
point.
are
Hold on a second.
deviant, like
Nick, to your point. One of
Marjorie
the
Taylor
biggest,
Greene,
one of the
we
biggest
listen to
issues
them
that
a lot.
exist. Hold on a
Well,
second,
it's
Nick.
because she dominates the market. She
Yeah, she
dominates the
dominates the
video.
market.
Well, that's because they're weird. It's Barnum and
Yeah.
Bailey's circus. Okay, let's bring in the big fat lady and the tall giant. You
But
know?
Nick,
And people will
hold
watch
on a
it. That
second.
doesn't
Hold
mean
on a
they
second.
know
Time out.
anything.
Nick and
That means
Jacoby.
they don't know the
Nick and
track.
Jacoby. One of our shows that exists actually talks about a pandemic that exists as well, and we've alluded to it a couple of times on the news. And this is an example of what that pandemic is all about. So there is a lot of narcissists and a lot of bullying that goes on. We have an
There
entire
we go.
show here on Pod TV that is about that, called "Where Is the Love?" So that is definitely something that goes on and is a major problem, not just nationally but worldwide. I mean, most people would admit that that's really what Putin is a big overgrown bully, and all along those kind of ways, and is definitely killing tons of people in the process with his type of bullying. But it is a major pandemic that exists, and therefore that
Yeah.
might be part of the conversation.
Yeah, but the thing is, this person deserves zero attention. So instead, we need to look at some important people like Putin, okay, who really clearly has in his brain, his tiny little pea brain, to create world domination and make the Soviet Union great again, or Russia great again, or wherever the heck's in his puny little Putin brain. And this guy causes major terroristic problems throughout the world. He's deserving of attention, but also has a lot of what they call enablers, people that support him directly or indirectly. Okay. And part of it is India, which Steve isn't around, so we can't beat up India. And we have to wait till Steve gets here. Then we slap India around for supporting Russia. And then also China, who, by the way, I couldn't find any views on China on the Pod TV network, Mark, which means that we're getting banned in China. Belarus, I found views. People actually watch us in Belarus. So Belarus watches us. Russia, I'm not sure about. China. Russia used to, but now they're
There
gone.
was a couple
China
of viewers.
definitely
There were
not.
a couple of viewers in Russia and everything. Speaking of places that have views, we have some views in the Middle East and everything. So I was just wondering, because apparently the Middle East is back in the news as well, because there was a vote held at a meeting of the World Heritage Committee, overseen by UNESCO, the UN's cultural protection agency, because the UN has one of those as well, in the Saudi capital of Riyadh and all in that. And it added the prehistoric site of ancient Jericho, including a nearby spring, to their World Heritage list, raising the number of inscribed Palestinian sites to 4. So, of course, since that area is in the occupied West Bank, which Israel seized along with Gaza and East Jerusalem in the 1967 war, Jericho is administered by the Palestinian Authority, which nominated the site. But of course, the folks there in Israel aren't too happy about this. They're going like, wait a minute, we've got some rights to this as well. There's got a lot of history with us. Why are y'all stuck there? And all along those kind of lines. As a matter of fact, in a statement carried by the Israeli media, the foreign ministry said the decision was another sign of the Palestinians' cynical use of UNESCO and their politicization of the organization. So apparently Israel quit this organization back in 2019. So what are our thoughts about this fact that apparently there's some ruins over there in the Middle East that are getting some recognition, and folks are not too happy about it?
It's just great that they fight over desert land. I mean, the thing is, Mark, I just don't get it. I mean, I've seen pictures. Unfortunately, I've never been there, but I've seen pictures. You know, this place is like a desert. It's like fighting over the deserts of Arizona. Who the heck wants to live there? If they do, live there at your own peril. Yeah, Arizona has 110-degree weather year round, And if you like it, fine. But there's a lot of people, they're called normal people, who just won't live there. Why would you want to live in a place which is a desert that's been around for 2,000 years and people are fighting over little crumbs? Go ahead, Sasha. Why do you
I've
want to live
been in that.
You don't live in a desert. Live in Canada.
I lived. I didn't live, but I was there. There was a bus stop where we stopped, and there was a little place where the guy was selling drinks, like Coca-Cola or lemonade or whatever you want to buy. It's such a disgrace. The temperature there in the shade is 45 Celsius, and
Which is what in Fahrenheit is 45?
55, 60. Oh, it's probably 115.
Oh, really? Great. Yeah, just what I want to live in.
Yeah, enjoy. Okay.
Yeah.
So in this temperature, the brain cannot function normally. It's just impossible. So, for example, when you ask that guy that you want a glass of lemonade, to process this, it would take him 40 seconds. That's because the brain cannot normally function in this temperature. So he was staring at you for 40 minutes, and then he said, thank you. And then he brought you a lemonade, and you paid him some money or so on. This is a place that anybody would think to fight, of to own. Oh my God. Okay, there are some histories, sure, but with the temperature like this, I don't care about any history whatsoever. It's just impossible.
Well, hold on a second. So, hold on a second. I got a question for you, Toby, because speaking of history, and I'm sure, Nick, you're going to want to jump in on this one as well, but in South Carolina, there was a teacher, European-American teacher, as I understand it, that was assigning her students, an all-white class, to read Ta-Nehisi Coates' book, Between the World and Me, a book that dissects what it means to be Black in America. And the students wrote in an email that the book and accompanying videos that Woods played about systematic racism made them ashamed to be white, violating a South Carolina proviso that forbids teachers from making students feel discomfort, guilt, anguish, or any other form of psychological distress on account of their race. Reading Coates' books felt like reading hate propaganda toward white people, one student wrote. At least 2 parents complained, and now, of course, they're trying to see what's going to go on with this particular teacher and everything. So the Wood case drew national polarizing attention. Conservative outlets and commentaries decried her race shaming against white people, and left-leaning media declared her a martyr to cancel culture, the latest casualty of the raging debate over how to teach race, racism, and history that has engulfed the country since the pandemic. So what's your thoughts? Because apparently South Carolina is one of 18 states to restrict education on race since 2021, according to the Education Week tally.
Right. Well, South Carolina is a leader when it comes to racism in the world. I mean, come on. And anything comes from South Carolina. Why are we listening to this?
Well, the problem
that's wasting time.
That's the
South Carolina is not a state I look up to. I'm sorry. And anything that they do, I don't look up to either. So
South
we need to
Carolina.
states that actually can make a contribution to society.
But they got the peach in Gaffney, and Frank Underwood made Frank Underwood famous in House of Cards.
This is
South Carolina is basically a mistake on the map that you have to pass through to get to northern Florida. I mean, that's really what it is.
This is essentially the Southern strategy used in 2023 going into 2024. That's all it is. This whole book banning, learning about slavery makes me uncomfortable. It should. It's bad. It was an atrocity. So
every single one of my favorite lines comes from my favorite president, Andrew Shepard, played by Michael Douglas, who said, "American citizenship, you got to want it bad. It's advanced citizenship." And then he said, but he talked about his opponent. He goes, Bob Runson is good at 2 things: getting you afraid of it and selling it. And that's exactly what's happening, is that you take a group of people to a time that it used to be, and that's exactly what the Republicans and the Democrats are doing. And so politics today has become it's a game of fear and tactics that are saying, okay, if you don't do this, this. If you don't do this, that.
Hey,
And
But check this out. Here's the crazy part real quick.
Steve Angeltobi, shouldn't we be looking at her success rate? Because I'm reading this article further. It says that she's got an 80+% AP exam passage rate year after year, which is above the national average. So if
But
this
Mark,
methods aren't working,
Mark,
yep.
none of that matters. She could be the best teacher in the world, but these 2 or 3 little kids and their parents on the MAGA train are mad because they don't like the way that slavery or the history points out that white people are treated, or that's where the root of systemic racism, the root of the institutionalized racism, they don't like it. So she shouldn't teach. It doesn't matter to them. And so the MAGA crowd jumps up. Let's take her out. They don't care. Like the lady in Florida who was talking about global, I think it was climate change and everything else, and showed the Disney movie. The Disney movie had one character in there that was gay. Oh Lord, let me jump on my little post. That little gay character in that Disney movie is going to make my child gay, no matter if that teacher was phenomenal and teaching a great educated thing on climate change and science and so on and so forth. Oh no, it's MAGA time to come out and ban her. That's the problem. And it's fear, like Steve talks about.
Stupid because like when you look, like, I think that rather than, and here's my opinion as someone that in my own political journey gets very frustrated with the system, is that why don't we work together on areas where we can have common ground and forget the stuff that's so divisive? But even my own party, I can tell you, there are Democrats that actually are pushing to have my name taking off an invitation this Saturday at an event because I work with Republicans. And so they're like, Steve Rao is a bad Democrat. He's not a good man because he works with the other side. So therefore, if he runs for another office, we're going to primary his ass out of there, or we're just going to not talk to him. So,
Steve,
the thing is, what
but Steve, isn't part of that what has been happening recently? And I'm not saying that you would do that, but we've had at least that I can count, and I want to say, I'm not giving an accurate count because I'm trying to do it on top of my head. You tell me, correct me if I'm wrong. But just in the last year, we have had 6 people, or close to that many people, that campaigned under one party, and then as soon as they got in office, automatically switched parties and all those lines. We had one here in North Carolina that I'm aware of. There were the one in Georgia. There's a number of folks that.
What she did was wrong, switching parties like that. But I'll tell you, I think what might have led to it, though, what she claims is the caucus would, basically say, well, if you don't vote with us on every single issue, we're going to primary you, or we're not going to support you. And so, I'm not, but honestly, she shouldn't have campaigned on being pro-choice and then switch parties. I mean, that's just, because if, that's just.
It's not only that she switched parties, she changed her vote.
Yeah,
and that was a huge. I think that was the thing that hurt.
I don't mind if somebody changes. I don't mind if somebody has it. I mean, honestly, like, I have a lot of respect for Dale Folwell, the state treasurer. He's a Republican. He's conservative. He's not nasty about his beliefs. He stands by his principles. But he's done a pretty good job with treasurer in certain areas. He's very authoritative, very substantive in his knowledge. He's a respectful man. He came up the hard way. Reminds me a little bit of my own father. And there's a humility about him that I like. But at the end of the day, it's not like, but I know where he stands. It's not like he's going to flop one day and say this. He just says, I'm a conservative for these reasons, boom, boom, boom. Doesn't talk about the social stuff a lot, but he's not hateful about it. He's not out there going.
But Steve, I got a quick question for you that about that as well, because there are several people in our state politics, I would even argue our national politics, because we've talked about it before. At what point do we need to put even limitations on the people that are in office? Like I said, and I'm not saying this because one of her earlier campaigns was against my mom. That was like 25 years ago and everything. But Elaine Marshall's been Secretary of State for 25 years. I think Troxler was on the Agricultural Department.
Yeah, I know. And I want to run for Secretary of State.
Should there be a limitation on some of these
Well,
positions?
here's the thing. And I'm going to make, look, I mean, the bottom about Mike Weatherly, I've been getting some requests to send me a live link, Mark. So I keep forgetting to ask. So if you could email it to me and I'll post it later, please.
Yeah, no problem.
Okay. But here's the deal. In North Carolina, if we limit the governor and the lieutenant governor for 2 terms, why don't we do that for the other council of state offices? Now, I don't know whether it's because the parties would resist that, particularly the Democrats, because right now they only hold 3 council of state offices, well, maybe 4: the governor, the Secretary of State, Elaine Marshall,
right,
the state auditor, and I think that's about it. So, but the thing is, it's not fair to other candidates who want to run, who are, like I would love to run for Secretary of State. I think that'd be, a lot of people have been talking to me about. It's a technology job, it's a small business job, it's a good fit. But I can't run against Elaine Marshall. I mean, and so it's like, is she going to be there for another 10, 20 years? No, I think she's late 70s. Now, we'll give her this. She's a good Secretary of State. To defend her, I could see how the Democrats, if they want to hold on to a Democrat in that seat, Elaine Marshall is probably the best person to run because, she's the incumbent and she's done a great job with that office. So anyway, I'm a huge Elaine Marshall fan.
So one thing that I think, and this is the local municipalities and everything else, this is where I'm a bigger advocate for a third party than anything on the federal level, because as you point out, Steve, a lot of times when you switch parties or even try and compromise with a party, you're ousted from that particular party that you're in. Right. And a lot of that is due to, like when she switched parties and she ended up changing her vote. Well, what would happen if she would have gone third party and kept her vote the same? Could that have been the solution? And that's where, like I said, I think third parties could be advantageous and helpful. On the federal level, at the top, it's never going to work because it's all name recognition and a whole bunch of money. And this is why when we talk to what's the name about no labels, one, they don't put out their positions and their policies, but they're not actually hitting on an individual.
Here's the thing. But here's the thing, and this is a great topic to talk about before we close out today. I couldn't agree with you more, but the fact is third parties are not viable right now in the U.S. because all the money is going into the major parties. Number one, like I did a panel with Forward Party, which is different than No Label. So there's big confusion. Forward Party is Andrew Yang's party, which is saying that we're gonna push for the center, and so we're gonna have forward aligned candidates that are appealing to more centrists and moderates, right? I have gotten so many negative comments about me having a panel with Forward Democrats. I was on a panel, and I'm getting Democrats asking me to step down as a Democrat because I did that. I've had Democrats wanting to take my name off of an invitation that I'm hosting for Josh Stein. They won't put my name on there unless I am not aligned with the Forward Party, which is ridiculous. They're looking at it saying, well, why do I want to support a party that has Republican support? Hence, it gets you back to the whole reason of why we need to have a party. Because if I'm not willing to work across the aisle and get something done, then nothing's going to get done. Whether it's immigration reform, we've got gun shootings going on, parties are willing to work together on that. There are Republicans wanting gun reform in North Carolina. They've got bills on the floor, but they can never get it out of committee because they stall it in committee. So anyway, I can go on and on. I'm obviously in a very bad mood today because when you get negative emails all day and all night as the number one vote getter in Morrisville for 4 terms, got Democrats from the left, saying hateful things about me pretty much every day. It's like, why am I doing what I'm doing?
And the crazy part of Steve, and this is another thing that gets me about, the arena that you're in, is that really it's only the contentious bills and stuff like that that deal with that are the ones that, okay, you have to be pitted on sides. The ones that do get passed that are, bipartisan. For example, the gaming bill that was more bipartisan than anything.
Yeah.
That was more bipartisan.
But
We're not arguing.
it also got shot down recently.
Are we talking about bipartisanship? I mean, and I hope he's listening, but I have a Democrat right now that's messaging me saying I'm an idiot, I'm a jerk, I'm stupid, every day, personally attacking me on my social media. So, I mean, I'm like, wherever you are, come out in person and have a debate with me. But they're refusing.
Bring him on the show.
So,
bring him on the show and let's talk. But
I don't know.
But that's the thing.
But,
Steve, is like that gaming bill, for example. The gaming bill was a bipartisan across both. I mean, both parties were supporting it. And honestly, I think if I remember, it was a Republican that brought up that gaming bill and trying to push that forward. And there were co-signers that were Democrats on that gaming bill. But that's not a contentious bill.
It wasn't contentious until the residents of the town that the bill was going to go to, or the casinos were going to go to, fought back against it. Because I remember my mom was definitely a supporter of it. I have some other people that were supporters, and then the person ran a campaign against the whole notion of the casinos because they were feeling.
But what I'm saying is contentious in terms of Democrat Republican. The fight back was against the actual casino. It wasn't against these Republicans are bad or these Democrats are bad. So that bill was challenged, yes, by the people, but that was on the grounds of casino itself. But it wasn't challenged or hated from one side of the party to the other side of the party. However, if Steve were to go out and try and work with Republicans on a gun reform bill, that's content. That's a red meat. That's a campaign thing. Yeah. So it's
and speaking of contention, and we were winding down and everything. It does look like the city workers here in Durham are not happy with their pay raise, so that work stoppage, and I know that there are work stoppages and union strikes and movements all over the country. I'm thinking about UAW and, of course, the writer's strike, but the one here in Durham is going to continue because they are going on despite the possible work stoppage and all along those lines. So I knew that they said they were coming back to work, but now it looks like they are still not happy with the proposal that has been given to them and all along those lines. And I'm curious, this is for you, Stephen, we could talk about it maybe tomorrow, but apparently Modi is doing a historic special parliament this week and everything, and some major decision is supposed to come down during this special parliament.
Nation of Bharat. That's what they're changing the name to Bharat.
Okay, they changed the name?
No, they're going to. I might change my name back to Sandeep. That's my first name. Hey, why not? I changed my name to Steve in 1982. Biggest regret I ever had in my life. It was hard being Indian in West Virginia in the 1970s. So Steve was my nickname, and Deep was my nickname, and I went with Steve. But Sandeep, you all can call me. But hey, my inner circle, or even my political enemies, now it's like the big thing. I say, if you're in my inner circle, my circle of trust, you can call me Sandeep. But let me tell you, when I exclude my family and my parents and my wife that calls me Deep, it's about 5 people. But I'm going to go ahead and extend that. Anyone here off the air can call me Deep. That's how much you guys mean to me. Okay. Mm-hmm. And I had somebody that asked me, can I call you that? And I told them no. That really hurt feelings. But I said, you're not on the inner circle, man.
You got to be part of the inner circle. And actually, my
brother
actually goes by his middle name. Like I said, my brother goes by his middle name, so I understand that because Malik is actually his middle name. It's actually Yusef Malik Lee. So I definitely
get I'm feeling a little Beyond Thunderdome today. Look, I got my Tina Turner shirt on. Woo! Woo! Right, Beyond Thunderdome.
All right, Deep. This is the deal, because we're gonna start back pushing on this hate stuff that you're getting, because you're family, so we're gonna push back. Anybody that challenges you online, bring them on the show and let's talk.
Let's talk.
Defend me, man. Defend me. Let's get in.
Yep.
Let's get in the ring.
I'm serious.
Like
anyone else?
Sometimes I start my day like the Creed movie, where I just look in the mirror and start.
And on that note, I know that Nick is heading on over there to get it going and everything.
Shit, he won round 13. Nick, go bring him on. Come on.
Bring on the enemies. And on that note, we get ready to get on out of here. We have the economic show going on, and we'll see
Yeah, I'm
what
coming on
David
11:30.
Walker. All right, so
I gotta take my
about
20-minute nap, man. Whew.
take that power nap.
Can you send me a link, please?
For
Yeah, me too.
economics.
Yeah, I need it.
Yeah.
Just email it to me.
No problem. I'll do that. And if y'all want to hold on at the end of the show, I'll get it from here as well. But let me just end the show right now.
Oh, Mark, can you send the